Hello and welcome to the pods. This is day two, post-draft live hangout. And so we're going to go through the three picks the Dolphins made today, the two trades, as well as quickly go through some of the more interesting parts of the second round, as well as talk about a couple of guys we think the Dolphins should target in the sixth and seventh round. They have, I believe, three picks still, one in the sixth, two in the seventh, joined by Ian Wharton. You can read at Bleacher Report and draftcentric.com and follow him on Twitter at NFL Film Study. You can find the recorded podcast and this and the other podcasts, hangouts will be up on Monday evening. So should we start with the first pick? I think this is the one where we're maybe going to disagree the most. And so I think I'd start with, I disagree with the process of this pick, but I like the player. So should we talk about the process first?
Sure.
So spent a fourth round pick to move up, I think it was 5 spots, to take Xavier Howard, the corner from Baylor. And Greer in his the post-pick kind of presser said a couple of things that were interesting. One was that he fit their size or height, weight, speed parameters, which is interesting considering he tested really badly, at least at the combine. He was like, in terms of like the speed tests, he was bottom 20 percentile. Greer did then cite his pro day numbers, so that's kind of interesting. That because generally pro day numbers are always faster by a tenth.
Especially Baylor. Baylor has the history of being way off on their 40 times.
Because they've got like really fast turf and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like the artificial turf. And then he also said they were expecting a running corner, and we literally didn't see a corner go for another hour or so. So there's kind of some flaws in the process there, where their scouting of other teams and what they're going to do is flawed, as well as just the kind of the position they were in terms of the players that were still on the board. I have Xavier Howard with Sean Davis and Will Redmond, and they were around for a while. So I think that part of the process was also kind of flawed. They basically traded up to get the first player in the run instead of, they could have just waited 5 picks and they may have still got Howard, or worst case they get Sean Davis, who to me is a similar talent. Do you have any other kind of issues with the process?
No, I mean, I think you nailed it. I think they really botched the process, and I think that's what bothers me more than the player. There were some other.
I can understand like having a difference of opinion and evaluation,
Sure, and I don't think Howard's a bad player. So I did go back this morning and watch a little bit of him. I would have graded him as like a 3rd or 4th round prospect. So I mean, a 1-round reach, I'm not gonna
so it is a mid-second.
Yes, I mean and I get it. It's a perfect scheme fit. I get that. But as far as the process goes, I thought that was a disaster. There were teams. So for comparison's sake, later in the same round, I think it was Chicago that dropped down, because they dropped down twice. So I don't think that they were a threat.
The Ravens dropped down like twice as well.
Oh yeah, and the Ravens. I think it was the Ravens trade.
Yeah,
so the Ravens. Well, they had their other trade. I think they dropped down like 17 spots, and they got a 4th round pick for that, like a future 4th round pick or something for that. Someone did that. Then also look at the end of the first round when the 49ers moved up from 37 to 28, and that cost them a 4th and a 6th, which that makes sense because you're getting the 5th-year option on the player. So Miami gave up way too much in this trade to go up 5 spots. 4 of the teams were not going to take a cornerback, and the Chicago Bears were the other team that was possible. Well, the Bears dropped down twice and took Cody Whitehair, so I think that they misread that one. And like you said, if they do take Howard, there are multiple guys, including Jalen Mills, who is still on the board. And I actually think Mills is a better cornerback overall than Howard. And like that's where
I think they may see Jalen Mills as a safety, though, maybe.
they could. Yeah, I mean,
That's
they
what I
could.
think.
It just the question is, I mean, I think most other
There's
teams would
still
look
like
at
Will
Howard.
Redmond, Kendall Fuller, Sean Davis.
Yeah, Kyrie
Those guys.
Russell went a full round later. James Bradbury went a full round later. Daryl Worley's pretty comparable, and he went a full round later. Worley's really bad. I mean, I'll say that. I don't like Worley at all. But I
I
mean,
don't think it's draftable. So.
yeah, but I mean, if they're just looking at like the way that these guys measured, Worley's pretty similar, and they both have similar bad tape. It's just Howard's was a little bit better. I mean, it wasn't disastrous like Worley's was at times.
Oh, let's talk about then Howard as a player. He has really bad plays, and then he has some like really amazing tape, in my opinion. But I guess the issue is what he does badly, he also does well at times. There's kind of not consistency. And some of that is I think he panics, and then the decision making gets cloudy. So I think that's kind of one issue. There is games like SMU is a good example where he got beat. I think it was on the first snap. Davis bomb to Cortland Sutton, who'll be one of the best wide receivers in a couple of years to come out. But then he really didn't get he didn't really give any space to Cortland Sutton after that. And I think SMU started moving Cortland Sutton to the slot to try and get him away from Howard. So, and I watched every SMU game, and I use Cortland Sutton as a good parameter for players. And there's also one reason why I really liked William Jackson is like Cortland Sutton had to find new ways to separate that he hadn't before, and he only had like 2 receptions. They were both comebacks. One was for a touchdown. And interestingly, Xavier Howard and William Jackson both went to the same high school. So and they're both players that we assume, or we obviously know the Dolphins are interested in Howard, but I assume Jackson they liked as well. They did have him in for a visit. So that's kind of interesting. I think it's, but kind of like, so maybe should we talk about his issues? It's always with the deep ball. And there's like that Pro Football Focus stat going around that he had like a 35% completion percentage on him. That's kind of a misleading stat because Baylor play a load of bad passing teams, and there's a load of deep balls that he was beaten on, and either the guy just fell out of bounds or was incomplete, but it wasn't because of Xavier Howard. It's kind of like the Rashard Robinson, Mike Evans game, where it wasn't Rashard Robinson that meant that Mike Evans had a 50-yard game. It was Johnny Manziel. So there's just kind of like that. There's always like misleading stats.
Saw that a lot with Mackenzie Alexander as well.
Yeah. But I think it's his main issue for me is his long speed, which is then kind of interesting that Greer brought up like his speed, and just he panics and then he makes mistakes. But in terms of like what he does well, I think what I really like about him is his lower body. I think for his size, he looks pretty good. I think he could be a little bit lower in his stance, but generally like his hips move pretty fluidly, and his short area acceleration is pretty good when like closing on slants and stuff. So I like that part of his game. He probably could be a bit of a better tackler. That'd be kind of another issue, but I don't think we're going to see like as bad tackling as we have from our corners like Brent Grimes. So it should still be an upgrade from that.
Yeah, he's not Grimes bad. Yeah, I mean, I agree a lot.
He's got maybe like top 3 or 4 like ball skills in this class, I'd say.
It's hit or miss.
Yeah,
the problem is that this class is bad. I'm not even going to bring up last year, but so I mean, I think I agree with a lot of what you said. I mean, I do kind of like his lower body. I like his physicality mix with lower body. So my thing on with him is when he's out of phase, and then you kind of touched on this. So out of phase is like out of position a little bit. He's not looking where the ball is. He can get really lost. It's just the ball skill things is just so inconsistent. Like you're right, at times, if he looks and finds the ball early enough, he will play it like a receiver, which is very encouraging. There's just other times where he has no clue what's going on. So, and
He got a lot better. He's only been a 2-year starter, and he really improved in his second year. So that's kind of promising as well. Did you like spot anything in particular that as an issue as to why he'd lose it? Other than I think when he's got a similar issue to Byron Maxwell when he doesn't always win at the line of scrimmage, and then
he can't make
in
up
trail
for it.
it's not good.
Yeah, he can't make up for it, and it's going to be a big issue. And Miami has to make sure that they do not allow either cornerback to have inside responsibility on routes, because Maxwell was destroyed on crossing routes. Yeah, he just lacks the speed, and it's going to be the same thing with Howard. So, I mean, that's a coaching thing. They can kind of protect themselves.
I think Howard's a bit better, just his closing speed on crossing and slants.
Maybe so. I think that it's hard with the Big 12. And we were unfortunately robbed of a Josh Doxson, Xavier Howard matchup late in 2015 because Doxson was hurt. So I wish we could have seen that, because if he would have played well against Doxson, I probably would feel better about it. But I think our evaluations are pretty similar.
The Cortland Sutton game is interesting. There's not many targets in it, but it's just interesting, like his recovery from getting beaten deep, like early on, and then he doesn't really let him get past him.
Yeah, and that's encouraging. I just don't love the pick because of who else is available later, and I'm a huge resource management person for the draft.
Yeah.
If I can get the similar player around later, I think that you made probably a not great pick. Not necessarily that he's going to be a bad player. I look at Xavier Howard and I'm going to say, is he going to be more than an average starter? In this defense, cover 2, cover 4, you don't really need more than an average starter. That's the good news, but you are going to need to protect him with linebackers. You're going to need safeties to protect him. Now, the safeties are obviously set. I think that's a good position. The linebackers could be good. And we'll get into some of these other picks. I think that's where my big concern is there's not been addressed. And
when they traded up and you could have taken Noah Spence, who went the pick later, that could be kind of the...
Right, and then you need to look at it and say...
Round later, you can take a corner.
Right. Would you rather have Noah Spence and Sean Davis or Kendall Fuller or Jalen Mills or any of the other cornerbacks? Or would you rather have just Xavier Howard? So, because with their 4th round pick, 107 overall, Jalen Mills will be on the board. I'm trying to think who all got picked. Maurice Canaday, I think he's a pretty similar player as well. From Virginia, he's going to be on the board. Harlan Miller is going to be on the board.
And like lots of running backs, you could have. We'll get to the running back, but you could have done corner before, and then you take running back later.
Yeah. Well, and I guess we'll probably move on. I mean, I didn't think Howard was a bad pick. If I was to grade this, quote unquote, I'd probably say it's like a C. The trade up is what bothered me. It wasn't so much the pick, and I was hopefully conveying that effectively on Twitter, which is difficult to do.
So I had Howard as my 34th player, but so then if you look at that just kind of like vertical board to like where the Dolphins picked, it would look like good value, but passing up on Noah Spence and trading up for him, just the process is the issue.
And we talked about this last night, how when you looked at the Dolphins' first round pick of Laramie Tunsil, you look at the players around him, how much he stands out from those other players, even though there are some other good players there. You do the same thing for the 2nd round. Guys that they could have traded up maybe even a spot or two higher than if those teams were interested in trading down, and maybe they weren't, But the Browns, I think, were. And so, again, it depends on cost. But you look at some of these names: Hunter Henry, Miles Jack, Chris Jones. And then right after Howard, you're looking at Noah Spence, Sterling Shepard, Reggie Ragland. Those are way better players to me than Xavier Howard. Those are much more impactful players and much more difficult to attain players in most seasons than a cover 2 corner. And you look at the devaluation of the system overall, not to say that corners aren't important. They're very important. They're always going to be important, no matter the scheme. But if any scheme, this is going to be the one that you can kind of get away with, like, okay corners. And Carolina is a really good example of that. You just have to provide them with different support. So it really bothered me that they didn't take Spence. I would have even preferred Ragland over Howard.
I think Ragland would have been off their board, just if you think of it's
Maybe
if
so.
you're talking about Kiko being the middle linebacker, you wouldn't then go and kind of take the polar opposite player or style of player.
Yeah, and they could have viewed Ragland as a strong side linebacker too.
Yeah, they could have.
Depending on. But I mean, it's hard. It's hard to. I think Spence was the one that's really going to bite him in the ass.
Yeah.
Because if you would have walked away with this draft with Noah Spence, I mean, I would have happily given up the 4th round pick. I would have probably given up this year's 4th round pick and next year's 4th or 3rd round pick to get Noah Spence. He's that good.
Yeah,
He's going to be a stud.
He was like the last of those edge guys left of that tier. So then
and you could argue that he was the only edge guy.
Yeah, yeah.
So in this entire draft. So I just think that they kind of misread that. But he's going to be in the mix of cornerback. And that might be another concern. Is he better than Bobby McCain?
Well, I think they're going to view, especially with kind of they're talking about the size parameters. They're going to be Bobby in the slot. I guess maybe we'll finish on Xavier Howard, but I guess like a way to maybe make it simple for people in terms of like my expectations. Like for me, Xavier Howard is what people are pretending Tony Lippett is.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'd be surprised if Lippett makes the roster.
Yeah, I mean he might do.
Maybe like 5th corner. I mean,
it just depends who drafted him really. If he was a Tannenbaum or Greer pick, then he will. I think he was a Greer pick.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine.
So
he would have fit Hickey's.
Yeah, so then he should survive. But Xavier Howard is kind of the similar ilk where you're betting on the flashes of ball skills, and obviously Lippett is a wide receiver, so there's a lot of like idea that he would have ball skills, but it's still like a raw prospect, but 2 years on, but just a lot better and lower body. And like can understand some kind of like complex nuances of the game. He's just got to, I think we're going to see a lot of the kind of press about these corners is that they're press physical, like tall corners. But I don't think you want either of them really jamming at the line of scrimmage much, because as soon as if they ever lose that or and they're in trail, then you've lost that play. So I think they're both good when you can mirror.
Yeah, and I would say Howard is probably better at press than Maxwell. But you're right, though. It's just when he loses, that's the issue. Is he's not better when he loses right now, and that's hard to. It's really hard to get better at. You don't see many guys get too much better at that, so it's hard. And maybe he will. You're maybe looking at like an average starter. So their goal was to add a starter with this pick, and they probably. I mean, they can make that happen. There's not a clearly better.
You can play press and you don't need to jam. You can mirror and it works fine.
Right.
But it's just like the rhetoric is going to be the physical, press corners. We've even seen like Maxwell saying himself he's a physical man corner, but I mean they're not really going to play man coverage.
Right.
So there's just some interesting verbiage going around in terms of these roles that maybe isn't reality.
Yeah. Which happened in the previous regime too.
Yeah.
The media just ran with it. So let's get into possibly one of the worst 3 picks in the entire draft so far.
So Kenyon Drake.
Kenyon Drake. Yeah.
Uh,
This is a disaster.
So maybe I'll start off with giving, like, if you're looking at my horizontal draft board and you're wondering why I'm going to lampoon this pick, but I have him as a fourth rounder. This isn't like this time I haven't made a scheme like a team specific board, and so my evaluation of Kenyon Drake is he's really valuable, useful player in like a Sean Payton offense, where you're rotating due to play and situation. Whereas all our understanding of Gase, all his history is he's going to use running backs, and what he's been talking about is using backs in rotation. And that really is not playing to Kenyon Drake's strengths. To me, he's like a third down scat back. You can play him out of the slot as well, so you're going to be moving from the backfield to the slot, but you really don't want to hand him off the ball a huge amount, partly because he has poor vision. He presses the hole pretty well, but that's not that useful if then he doesn't make the right decision. And he's good in the open field, so that's kind of why he's really effective in like a Sean Payton style offense.
Yeah.
But
I actually tested as an average athlete, which was interesting.
he's
So like
fast. He's the fastest.
he's to me, he's a straight line athlete. Matt Miller, who I respect a lot, said that he was their version of Lamar Miller. That couldn't be further from who Lamar Miller was as an athlete. Lamar Miller was a fantastic athlete. Kenyon Drake is not a great athlete. He's a straight line athlete. He's a fast runner. The poor man Reggie Bush comp is not an endearing comp because Reggie Bush wasn't really that productive, and he wasn't. And you saw like the limitations of the NFL spacing with him. So take a lesser player, and what do you have? You have someone that's going to not really stand out as an athlete in the NFL. You're right about his usage. I actually think he's a better receiver than a running back.
Yeah,
I think he's a vertical threat receiver, or someone that you get the ball to in a vertical passing attack, and then you get him one on one.
So basically, like Sproles.
Yes, yeah. I mean it sucks to use that comp because he's one of the few guys who do that. Maybe the guy from New England too, Dion Lewis. There's not many backs that do that ultimately that effectively. And is this one of those guys, or is he going to be Dre Archer? Because Dre Archer was the same type of player, and Dre Archer was more electric in the open field. Kenyon Drake had injury issues, and
a broken leg, a broken arm.
Yeah, in limited usage. They didn't trust him even down the line. The reason why that Derrick Henry had so many carries, it wasn't because he's a beast. He is a beast. But they also had other guys on that roster. If they trusted Kenyon Drake, they would have used him because Nick Saban has always used a tandem of running backs.
Yeah.
He didn't because he didn't trust Drake. So, I mean, to me, this is just you look right after my guy, Kyrie Russell, Shalik Calhoun 2 picks later. Who else here? Adolphus Washington, a couple picks later. Austin Hooper would have been an intriguing pick if you wanted to go offensive playmaker. Jordan Jenkins, that was really the guy I wanted as a potential replacement to Koamisi. And then you're getting back into the Dolphins' next pick. So that's what bothers me. And then the pick right before is hell of a pick by Chicago.
Or even like Javon Hargraves and
Javon Hargrave was a hell of a pickup. Who got him?
it was the Steelers.
Pittsburgh? Oh, that's a fantastic pick. And I mean that's the thing that you want to look for is like you can't sell him, well, he's going to upgrade special teams. Well, you don't take a guy in the 3rd round to upgrade special teams. You take him in the 6th or 7th round. Like Josh Ferguson could give you as much as, if not more, than Kenyon Drake, and he's going to be a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick. So
and then you look
again,
at
it's resource
on
management
the board as well. So
and that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother issue.
And we even talked about
smokes.
this on our running back preview show. It's like wait for the guys that fall into the 4th, and that's what the value is. And then obviously they have the problem of they don't have a 4th round pick anymore. But you can even extrapolate that to in the 5th, and like
Sure.
there's probably
There's
not
going
going
to
to
be
be.
good backs. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's Devontae Booker, Paul Perkins, Jordan Howard, Kenneth Dixon, Jarrell Presley, Jonathan Williams, Josh Ferguson, Alex Collins. Like, not all of those guys are going to be gone by the 5th round, and
No.
most of
No, it
those
happens every
better
year.
and not comparable
Yeah.
players.
Happens every year that these rotational level backs fall to day 3, and we saw it last year with the JJ. And obviously there were some injury reasons there, but he may have slid as well just because he's a running back. I mean, teams,
And then
if you're not
Devontae Booker's injured as well. And to me, that was like the perfect guy to slip and like perfect fit.
right,
But I mean, they could
I
still
mean,
draft him in the 5th. And then,
yeah, I mean they could, and I don't know if that's a bad idea, but I'd probably rather take that flyer on like Arian Foster, because now you still need a second running back.
yeah, that's
That's
the
the
problem.
issue, because Kenyon Drake is not a real runner. He's a receiver. Now, he has value, sure. There is some value. Miami likes, I mean, Gase is going to want to throw him the ball, but it's just you're not going to use him as a reliable running back on a like drive-by-drive basis, which Gase wants. So it's just that to me was an F. Like you can't make picks like that. It's reckless. That's what Tannenbaum would like, though. And we talked about options for Miami in the first round. If Tunsil wasn't there, we can speculate all you want, but I almost feel like Miami might have averted a disaster by reaching on a guy that maybe fit like that SEC Parcells, looks the part, doesn't really play the part type role. That's what I would kind of start worrying about, because that's what the Drake pick told me. Now, the other picks made me feel a little bit better, and maybe they're just obsessed with adding that type of quote unquote versatile playmaker who's not really that versatile. But I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong in just my evaluation of him. But it's really annoying already on Twitter, people going to Kenyon Drake's bat when he wasn't really impressive at Alabama. He was the 3rd best running back there. Bo Scarborough was easily the 2nd best running back there.
I mean, maybe you could like hope that there's like some hidden, like we haven't seen the best of him, which I think could be fair. But then to be that indecisive behind such a dominant offensive line is a big worry. Like his feet are really choppy and indecisive, and that having kind of quick feet is really useful in the open field, and that's why he kind of flourishes. But as a runner, first you have to get to the open field, and that's where he's going to struggle. And the windows are so much smaller, so those feet are only going to get more indecisive.
Exactly. I mean, it's exactly what we saw with Melvin Gordon last year, and Melvin Gordon was twice the athlete, and he was 3 times as productive. It just I don't. If they get anything out of him more than as like a return man, I think that's probably his biggest plus. And I mean, if they start flexing him out to receiver, well, then he's fun. If you're going to use him like that, then it's fun. But I mean, as we get into this next pick, Leonte Carew, I don't know why you'd ever really use him out there at receiver.
If the two means they're going to move on from Landry, because the combination of Carew and Drake kind of replace Landry, but in separate people, maybe.
Yeah, and to an extent, I think they sort of replace Stills as well.
Yeah.
Even though Carew and Stills are not the same as far as their vertical speed, I think Carew is similar as far as how dangerous he is on deep routes.
Should we talk about Carew first before we get into what they spent?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So do you want to go ahead and kind of talk about what type of player he is if people aren't familiar?
Yeah, so he is what he is. I don't know if he'll get better. He's a good athlete. Let's see what his measurement was. I think he was like 6 foot.
6 flat.
Yeah, so 6 foot flat, 211 pounds. He's a decent athlete. He's a good athlete. Not a great athlete. He is a good football player, though. He is someone that you really like because they had nothing else on that offense. And he was still able to produce a lot of yards. He was able to get vertical on top of cornerbacks despite not being that great athlete, which tells me, and you can see this on the film too, he's a very good route runner. He has to be a little creative to create separations, but he can create a lot of separation even against quality competition. He gave a lot of good teams headaches with very little talent around him. So I like him a lot. I think he's a guy that instantly comes in as one of maybe the most polished receiver on the Dolphins roster, which isn't saying a lot because Hazel might be the current most polished receiver on the roster as far as like nuance of the position. So, but I think he's actually a good complement to Parker, who is more physically dominant and a little bit more raw in his development, and Landry, who doesn't have to do anything as far as technique, being in the slot, which is fine. That's his role. I actually really like this pick as far as the talent, because this tells me, what do they have next year? 1 or 2 receivers in their final contract year?
So
Just
Stills,
right?
Yeah, everyone else is.
And then Hazel?
No, Hazel will still be on his rookie deal.
He's got one more. Okay, so yeah, so to me, so this is fine. I mean, I like being cheap at the receiver position if you're not going to have a bona fide superstar, and they don't, on like a second or third contract, whatever. So I like being cheap at receiver. This is a cheap guy who can play right away. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he's starting by the end of the year. Like if Stills has another year like he did last year, he'll be unplayable because he was basically unplayable last year because of the drops.
It's insurance for Stills is, I think, one way to look at it. I'm less high on Carew than quite a lot of people.
I do think this was the right value, I will say. I think this is the right value and range to pick him. Like that third, fourth round, I think this was the right place. Because again, he doesn't.
I had him as like a 5th rounder, but I don't think he's as good a route runner as maybe you do. He struggles a lot against press, so I think that's somewhere where he can kind of be nullified pretty easily. He does have like really good hands and like not a large catch radius, but if something's hitting his hands, he's going to catch it. But he's not kind of even like Jarvis Landry catch radius. But then he offers a little bit more of a vertical threat.
We kind of saw like the more of a safer receiver pick in Landry too a couple years ago, and obviously it's a different regime, but same line of thinking. Greer was still in the building. I would have rather have seen like Malcolm Mitchell here. I think if you were going to go receiver, but I do like the Carew pick. It just kind of told me that like they felt like they needed an immediate impact guy over maybe like a developmental, more of an athlete type player.
Because I mean, I would prefer kind of like, I guess for me, I was kind of thinking they could go for more of a developmental prospect because they have kind of, they're going to give as many snaps as they can to Devontae Parker to develop him. Landry's not going to want to be off the field. And then kind of, I guess, like Stills is going to be pretty motivated. So then you could maybe rotate Stills and someone like a Carone Peak or Rashad Higgins to get them reps. So that would have been the way I would have gone.
Peak's a good name too. I wouldn't have minded him.
Do you think it was a panic trade up when they saw Braxton Miller come off and they thought, oh, this is another run? It kind of reminds me of like the mentality of when they went up for Will Davis, like both trades. It's like they were preempting runs that didn't maybe happen.
Yeah. I mean, it to me, it just clearly comes off that they didn't know what other teams were doing. And maybe that's something they will improve on. I think honestly, I think they probably should have taken Miller instead of Drake.
Yeah.
Like that would have made a lot more sense to me and then you wouldn't have had to take in Carew. You just have one player who can do both of those roles. And then you can just take a defensive player finally. And that's part of my concern too. Like we entered this draft and I had mentioned I could see this being mostly an offensive draft. I just thought that they were going to take more athletic upside type players like Hunter Henry and like Peak or Malcolm Mitchell or someone like that over guys who are much more limited like very average NFL athletes.
So I guess this doesn't mean into the trade, like the trade as well, like a win now, and these players are more of a win now kind of avenue, at least the two offensive players.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So the trade, they sent a future third and a future fourth and a future sixth or a future seventh, and got a sixth back with the Vikings. I think it was something like that. So they basically got destroyed.
Yeah, so I mean, you lost Olivier Vernon, you lost
Lamar Miller comp picks.
Lamar Miller comp picks. I mean, for a probably like a decent starting receiver. I mean, could you have just kept Rashard Matthews?
And they spent they basically spent 4 picks to get two players that they probably didn't need to spend any of those picks. Because then if you don't spend a fourth to get up for Xavier Howard, you're getting a wide receiver or a running back in the fourth of a comparable talent. Yeah. So it's really bad management of assets.
Yeah, and it's either out of desperation or it's out of completely unaware of what other teams want to do or plan to do. And that's where like the good GMs come in. It's not necessarily just talent evaluation. That's where you need like just scouts, you need the coaches, you need like a really good team of evaluators who work well together. As important as that is, yeah, like the big function of the GM is to understand everything around the draft, understanding other teams, having relationships at other teams so that you can kind of leverage your knowledge of them to properly value players. To me, this was, and I give Carew, I'd probably give him like a C+B type grade. So not too far from Howard. I don't mind it. I like having him on the roster. This is a player I can look at him and say, yeah, that's a good player. Like we could do something with him. But the problem is how you got them. And that haunts franchises. Like that's what costs GMs their job. And you look at Jacksonville, I think Jacksonville's a really good example of this. Before this past offseason, they were just investing into like average players at best, and they lacked impact players. And it's so difficult to get impact players that it almost cost Gus Bradley his job last year. So, and it took him years to get there. So it's like at some point you either have to make those big swings and develop those guys, or, I mean, really that's the only, or you just have to luck out and kind of fall into those elite playmakers, which is, I mean, that's not a viable strategy. So I don't know. I mean, I worry about the assets that they gave up for the future for overall players who aren't going to be huge impact players.
And people keep saying, oh, the trade's fine because they were comp picks. Well, no, they're still picks, and it's hard to get comp picks. There's a reason why Miami have the least amount of, they're like in the bottom 5 of comp picks, because
they don't draft well.
Players, and then so it's just it's not like an easy thing to find, and they are valuable. Like some of the best Dolphins are 3rd or 4th or 5th round picks. And it just goes back to like the Jimmy Johnson thing. It's like you want more good picks. The more good picks you have, the better chances. So with this, they got rid of 2 4th rounders, and those have got like maybe one of them's got the chance of being another Jelani Jenkins or Rashard Jones or someone. At least someone who's mildly serviceable, or a Jay Ajayi. But you're just completely getting rid of the chance of that ever happening by just giving that pick up.
And then it only compounds things when you've restructured all these contracts, and now Miami's sitting there with like $19 million of cap space. And for what?
At least it rolls over. But then,
I mean, it rolls. Yeah, it just, you could have waited to do that.
Yeah, and then if you just didn't restructure Sue, then you just eat it all in one go, and then when he's 34, you're not paying $28 million for him, and you're not getting. But I mean, I don't think that was an option. I think that was the agent wanted to get $80 million guaranteed, but the team didn't want to do that in one go. So that's the real Sue contract, was 80 million guaranteed, but obviously,
And
yeah.
it's ugly too that they essentially traded Kenyon Drake for Lamar Miller. That's basically what the trade of his comp pick means. So it's just I don't know, man. Like, hopefully I'm just way wrong on Kenyon Drake, but I know I'm far from the only person with that opinion on him. We'll see. We'll see. The takes on him are crazy. People act like he would be like a first round pick if it wasn't for Derrick Henry. Get out of here. Like, if he was that good, he would have been playing over TJ Yeldon and Derrick Henry if he was that good. I don't even know what to expect for tomorrow. I was so excited after Laramie Tunsil, and today was just kind of like a fart noise. And it's not because they got two decent players, but again, it's just especially as a draft person, we feel like we're going to be able to maximize those picks. Even a 6th round pick, I can find you a good player. Michael Bennett was a 6th round pick last year, or a 5th round pick last year, whatever he was, 5th or 6th round pick. And it's like he ended up being one of the best rookie defensive tackles in the class last year. He was better than Jordan Phillips.
We all knew.
Right. So it's like, that's the thing, is like a draft person, it's like you don't just sit there and back up the team and say, I'm going to trust this rookie head coach or this rookie GM over you just because. And it's like, we've gone through this with other regimes. You say the same thing every new regime. Like, it's okay to criticize because they poorly used assets. We can call it what it is now, and then we'll see and reevaluate in a year, 2 years, 3 years. But it's like, at the time of the pick, we're using the best knowledge that we have available, which, well, a lot of people do a lot of digging, and a lot of us get a lot of this stuff right. Like, we all have misses, but I think generally we hit more than we miss. So it just, I don't know. It was really annoying to see on Twitter already people getting super. I mean, I appreciate the fandom aspect of it, but like, don't put that in my mentions. I don't want to hear that. I'm not overly fawning over anything that happens with the team besides Laramie Tunsil. That's the only thing that's like the most exciting thing that's happened to this franchise in the last couple of years. So,
I at least like Xavier Howard, so it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I like him too. I just, again, I can't get over the trade for him.
I can't get over
it because that's really bad for like the outlook of the team too. Like, that changed how I'm going to view everything this team does.
If you want to be positive, it means probably the staff isn't going to be around that long. At least the front office staff.
Because I hope the coaching staff is.
Yeah.
I have good feelings about the coaching staff.
Well, they'll get definitely more than a year. Whereas, like, I've been saying that Barr might not.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, you've been on that.
And then I think this is like another kind of quite large knife in the back of him. We'll see. But he's done well to put Greer in between him and the draft. So,
right.
And we obviously saw Hickey lasted 1 year with.
Yeah, man, he's a snake, man. He's a snake. And I was hoping, and I think that was like the biggest realization of the Howard trade, is that I was hoping he wasn't going to continue to leverage future things for win-now moves, and he did. And I know that we saw it with Sue, and the justification was, we're going to be aggressive, but we're not going to be overly aggressive in free agency. And we, like you said, we were going to do this no matter what with Sue's contract. So we're just going to do it and get it over with. Okay, it's fine. It was a bad move, but I get it. I understand the political game of it as well. And then now you can actually work on extensions or some other, whatever you want to work on.
But then, like, even the restructure Misi as well, like, you didn't have to do that.
Yeah, like that was dumb. But the Tunsil pick, I was off the euphoria a little bit. I was like, okay, like, you can see that this team is going to maybe just take best talent, which they needed to do. This team lacks stars,
and not like spend like with all the rumors of trading up as well. It's like, okay, they're not going to just like be impulsive. They're going to be kind of wait for talent to fall to them, which it's been doing all round.
And that's what the great teams do. That's what the great franchises do. So yeah, I mean,
Well, should we go through some players we would target then in the 6th and 7th rounds, assuming that the Dolphins don't trade more future picks to move up? So they've got 3 picks, 6th and 7th rounds. I mean, I would assume they're just going to probably take gunners and special teamers, but there's a couple of guys still around that I think are useful players, but they probably won't fall all the way to the 6th now. Or the middle of the 6th. But is there anyone in particular you'd be hoping does fall?
I'd have to take a look at the board.
I've got a couple. Obviously, DeAndre Houston Carson I've been talking about for ages. I think a safety would be useful. They need kind of like an extra guy, so whether it's him or Miles Kilbrew, Jalen Mills, if you want to play him kind of between 2 spots. I think
is there another room for another defensive back on the roster?
Definitely it's safety. I can bring up the depth chart now. But if you think if maybe Akins is moving to corner, then that kind of opens up a spot, or Michael Thomas is kind of like a nickel thing. But at the moment, they've only got 4 safeties on the roster, so you definitely need one to compete for some sort of spot. In terms of corners, you've got Maxwell Taylor, Bobby McCain, and Efo and Lippett, so as well as now Howard.
I wouldn't be surprised if they just wait for like either really late round, take Michael Jordan like I had talked about, or Mike Jordan like I had talked about before. Everyone viewed, a lot of people were saying like, oh, take Carl Joseph and stuff like that. Like they paid Isa starter money. I mean, he's
that's kind of not starter money anymore. That's kind of like third safety special teamer money, really. They're like 4 million. If you look kind of around, there's a load of third safeties are getting like that 4.5.
Interesting. That's kind of surprising. Well, I mean, I wonder if
the Vikings did
Michael Thomas. I wonder if they would consider him as like the
maybe
cheap third safety. I mean, obviously we'll find out.
But then you obviously, like, I think Michael Thomas is in his last year. And then obviously with Rashad Jones holding out, and that's for another podcast, maybe you want someone for training camp as well just to get reps. And you need more than 4 safeties. But I think there's kind of a lot of defensive backs. So maybe that's a position where you look for UDFAs as well, maybe.
Yeah.
In terms of linebackers, I think Luke Rhodes would be interesting. Another William Mary guy, Eric Stryker. There seemed to be like a lot of interest around Sir Cravens and Deion Jones for them. So I think he is in that kind of similar mold. Maybe if Joshua Perry falls as well.
Jatavius Brown out of Akron, I think he'd be really interesting.
In terms of edge players, I guess there's like Victor Oki. Maybe he falls.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Or Chris Tapper. Interior guys, there's not really anyone left unless Hassan Ridgeway somehow falls all the way down.
I'm surprised he's fallen this far. He's a good player.
Any other people defensively? Any corners?
Kalen Reed. That's a guy I really like.
Maybe they take a punt on Rashad Robinson and see if they can.
Yeah, I think day 3 would be right for him. Bringing up the cornerback rankings now. Harlan Miller. I mean, I like Maurice Canaday. I view him in the same vein as Howard. They could have had him round 4. Tavon Young's kind of interesting. It wouldn't fit their scheme though. So I mean, I would say probably Reed, Canaday, Miller.
Maybe like Zach Sanchez, but he'll probably go quite early tomorrow.
I would think so. Yeah, Ken Crawley. I like Ken Crawley as like a 7th rounder, or maybe UDFA. Wow, dude, Brandon Williams went like 3rd round, and he was projected to be a UDFA.
I didn't
from Texas A&M. So, Taviz Calhoun, he's interesting. I think I don't remember if he got hurt, but he's got the length and size. So if he becomes UDFA, I think he'd be an interesting guy to take a stab at.
Any linebackers you like other than the ones you brought up?
No, I haven't really gotten deep into them.
That could maybe work. And then anyone offensively, any position, I guess like tight end, maybe if Tyler Higbee keeps falling. That's one thing we didn't mention about Carew. I think he was suspended for a couple of games for an assault charge.
Yeah, it was later dropped. Yeah, it was a really weird charge. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind like a tight end like Thomas Duarte. Higbee has that really nasty charge on him.
Yeah.
He won't get drafted. I don't think he'll ever sniff the NFL with that charge.
Jake McGee maybe as well, the Florida tight end. Maybe he'll be.
I would
a
like
UDFA
him.
guy.
Yeah, he's interesting. I like Kevon Cartwright. He's fun. And
Jordan
also
Adams.
the Cal kid too,
Steven
Anderson. I like him a lot.
Okay. He would be like a UDFA guy I would maybe look at.
I would think so. Yeah.
Any other wide receivers you're kind of interested, or do you think they've kind of got their lot, or someone like Jay Lee maybe, or just see who falls out of? I think that would be more a UDFA.
Yeah.
And I think they probably could still draft another running back, because I don't think Kenyon Drake really is the answer to any of their real questions, unless they're going to go like 70% Jay Ajayi.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of running backs, so maybe they can take another one, and I don't think that would be out of the ordinary.
Well, no, because I mean, like I said, I mean, the guy they took isn't really like a running back, so maybe like a falling like Jonathan Williams, or maybe take a stab on like Keith Marshall or someone like that. I wouldn't be surprised.
And quarterback, do you think they'll?
No.
I guess they gave too much money to Matt Moore.
Yeah.
Have you been surprised of anyone that didn't get picked? I guess Christian Westerman and Hassan Ridgeway are like the two for me, where I have them as pretty high up.
Yeah, those are good names. I like Ridgeway quite a bit.
And Devontae Booker as well.
I'm not surprised he fell this far.
Yeah.
Josh Perry. I'm surprised he wasn't picked.
I haven't
as many. Yeah. I mean, it's weird with this class. So I mean, it's I don't know if I'm shocked that anyone wasn't picked. Just kind of looking through the names here, but yeah, I would say probably Ridgeway.
More guys last year that were high up. By this time.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. Man, Garris Garrett, he would have been fun to pick up too. Watch out for Ryan Smith too, the North Carolina Central cornerback. I've heard he's really good. I haven't seen him, but I've heard good things.
Okay.
I mean, North Carolina Central, so it's not like anyone's.
I've watched.
Not like many online people have really watched him. Yeah.
Is there any of the picks of other teams that you wanted to talk about, or should we bugger off?
Just look through real quick.
Hack was interesting. I made a lot of money on that one. I had him as the fourth going.
Nice.
And then I guess like Jacoby Brissett and Cody Kessler as well going. It's been interesting to see kind of Twitter who think Connor Cook's good. And I know they're kind of, Ian Rappaport's kind of putting out that because he wasn't a captain, that's the reason why he's falling. It's also because he's just not a very good quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. Like people were talking about him being like the best quarterback from this class, or like even like the best QB from this class. Like, there's no way he's nowhere talented as some of the other guys that went before him. I mean, Hack is bad, but I mean, Cook isn't that much better. So,
Jordan Palmer has obviously been working his magic as he did with Bortles.
He can maybe now throw a screen pass, like actually and get it there on time. I was really surprised Jalen Smith went so early. I'm not surprised it's to the Cowboys. I remember reading a couple days ago that the Cowboys surgeon or like head team director, is like the same surgeon. So I'm surprised Cardale wasn't picked.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
What else here? Especially behind like Kessler, and I just don't get like the upside of taking Kessler. I'll write about it tonight, but
yeah. But I mean,
Jihad Ward, possibly the worst player taken day 2.
Almost certainly. At least one I've watched, I have him as a priority free agent.
Yeah, I mean he's a horrible.
Him and Cody Kessler are the worst players on my board that have been picked.
Yeah, I would agree. I agree with you.
It's nice to see Nick Beagle go high, and James Bradbury. I think he deserves to go. I'm surprised he went that high. I had him as a 5th rounder, but
Robert Aguayo being traded up for was stunning. I mean, he's a hell of a kicker, obviously, but to trade up for a kicker is insane.
Hats off to, I think that was an NFL.com mock that had the Dolphins take him in the 3rd round. So the wrong team, but like the right idea. And he's an underclassman as well. That's so amazing to like declare as a kicker and get drafted.
Trying to see here what else. Daryl Worley was a little surprising 3rd round. Darian Thompson was a heck of a pickup in 3rd round.
I like the pick by.
Oh yeah, that was really nice. Yeah, that was great. That was a great pickup. Brandon Williams. Brandon Williams was probably like the other worst player taken, and then followed by Kenyon Drake. So yeah. I don't know, man. Really interesting draft so far. Like, this is very unpredictable, and that's kind of what we thought. Saints are having a heck of a draft.
It's unpredictable, but I think like most of the players are going in kind of the right range. It's just to like odd places, and then there's the odd guy that's kind of low. But it doesn't feel as like crazy as other years. I don't know. Maybe just as all the trades. It's just like confusing.
Yeah, and it's a lot of like moving up to moving down like 4 or 5 spots. It's really weird. And it's a lot of like late 3rd round pick or late 3rd day picks being swapped, which is another reason why Miami badly.
I wonder if it's just a lot of teams don't have many players on their boards this year. And so they only have like a couple of guys at each position. And then so they have to go up and get them, otherwise they're not getting anyone. So that could be maybe partly it. But so what's your big disappointment from this day of drafting?
So
just the general process of it all.
Yeah, just the realization that, they're going to give up a lot of picks for generally
role players, like guys.
Role players. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, because they're not bad players. I don't think Drake's great, but I do think Drake has a role. I just don't see why Miami would use a pick on that role. That's my issue with it.
It's like it's fine for like a 4th round pick, but not a 3rd. I mean, even a 4th round pick, I don't like it. Like in the first 3 rounds, you should be aiming for someone to, by their 3rd year, becoming a starter. And I don't think either of their 3rd round picks really has the opportunity. Me personally, I don't think either of them have that ability.
Yeah, that's very fair. So I mean, I guess just disappointed that it wasn't best player available. Build up the defense with long athletic players, and that's the thing too, is like it's not like they took good athletes; they took bad athletes or average athletes at best. So that's a concern. This Miami needs to be more athletic and dynamic. So that didn't get addressed.
And just getting younger where they're already young, and not really creating depth where there's. I think they needed a wide receiver. I just think it's really interesting that I think NFL.com had when they picked Kenyon Drake, it was like Miami finally pick a running back or address running back. It's like, well, I mean, they addressed it last year. It's just because of where they picked the player, and I think Andrew Aberson put a tweet saying that Kenyon Drake's the highest running back they picked since Daniel Thomas in the 2nd round, and it's that's why it's about the talent, not where they're picked. Because since then they've picked Jay Ajayi and Lamar Miller, who are far superior players, but just because they weren't picked at a certain place, and both because of different circumstances. So it's just like Jay Ajayi is far better than Kenyon Drake. Yeah, who was picked 2 rounds later. And there's a lot of backs that are going to be picked 2 rounds later than Kenyon Drake that are much better than him in this draft as well. But yeah, for me, it's like trading up to be able to get Noah Spence and then not picking him when you could have picked him and then still get a decent corner. So we're going to see a lot of Andre Branch, which is not good for anyone.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue. That's
horrible.
It's really scary that they feel comfortable with Andre Branch and Demontre Moore. I mean, hopefully this Julius Wormsley kid is good, or Clayton Lang, or Clay and Lang, whichever one came from Canada.
Lang.
Lang, yeah, or Fide. Hopefully they give Fide a chance.
Or maybe Dion Jordan still lives.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's the wild card here. He'd make me feel better about this.
Cecil Lammy a couple of weeks ago on the Football Guys hangout. He had an interesting. So he's a Denver radio host as well, and he said he'd been heard about a freeway trade was Talib, Dion Jordan, and Kaepernick. So Talib going to the Dolphins. I think we heard about like a Talib to Dolphins thing as well. But maybe that kind of changed once they got Maxwell. But that's just interesting that there's at least been some conversation about Dion Jordan being dealt. But who was initiating which side of that, we don't really know.
Right.
But have you got any passing words, or should we leave everyone until tomorrow when maybe the greatest part of the draft, the UDFA signings, which we'll again be recording live during?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, we'll be back tomorrow when we'll be talking to you whilst reading Twitter feeds of saying which players are signing where. We don't have the Wizards Duffner recruiting this year, but we'll see if any other position coaches step up to the mantle. It'll be a hard task, I think, to get to those same dizzy heights as Duffner did, but we'll see. So thanks for listening. Make sure you follow Ian at NFL Film Study, Bleacher Report, and draftcentric.weebly.com. You can follow the podcast at MiamiPod and iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean. That's where you can find it. TheMiamiPod.com has all the links to those, as well as my draft board if you want to see that. And you can donate to us and you can buy our t-shirts. No one won a t-shirt, so we'll have to think of another competition. Maybe we'll do a UDFA one, but I'll think of something. Anyway, thanks for listening, and don't trade any of your future children just so you can have a slightly older child now. Goodbye.